Today I'm going to be showing how I designed a pattern for this Dopp kit out of a tissue box and made it. It took me an hour. That's the miracle of the sewing machine. So here's your tissue box, just a regular old tissue box. Still has tissues in it, and it's about the size of the Dopp bag that I wanted to make, so I thought I would just use it as a pattern. Easy peasy, just cut it up. So I couldn't split it on the seams because you see the ends are glued so that the cardboard overlaps, and what we need is actually square ends for making the box corners on the pattern. So I just cut it out, sort of eyeballed down the middle of each end, and then cut up the sides to make the flaps. And then once I had that shape done, I needed the middle where the zipper was going to go, so I just again eyeballed it and cut right down the middle, and that makes the pattern for the box corner bag. And then I used this orange leather I got on super sale at Tandy a couple of years ago. I, of course, went to Tennessee for my undergraduate degree, and I have a fondness for orange stuff as a consequence. So I made this bag out of this orange. It's not what everybody would like, but it's for me, and I like it. Actually, I made another one, and I sold it even. So I'll have that in an upcoming video. Got trace all the way around the pattern. It's a little bit of a tedious process, but gotta do it. And then it's a hassle to try to cut that out on the whole big hide, so what I do here is I just cut out roughly around the edges of where the pattern is, and then I use then I cut closer to the pattern once I get the hide moved out of the way. I like to put this self-healing cutting mat underneath. Not because I'm worried about scarring up the bench top, but because the bench top's rough enough that the knife catches and it doesn't make a nice smooth line as I cut. So the self-healing cutting mat helps with that. It's funny, my parents bought me that self-healing cutting mat for making model kits when I was like 12 years old, so it must be 30, 32 years old-ish now. Still works though. Kind of wish I had a bigger one. I think at some point I'll splurge and buy a bigger sized one since I'm making bigger stuff than model kits right now. I cut it for time, but I actually went through and put a seam allowance around the edge, so after I had done the outline earlier, I went back with the dividers. And it's hard to see on the orange, but I'm actually cutting out about 1/4 inch wider than the original tissue box pattern, because that gives you the seam allowance that you need to be able to stitch it together properly. So I'm making this one out of leather. I have a leather sewing machine, so it makes it possible to do it. But if you wanted to do this and you didn't have that tool, I mean, you could hand stitch it, but you could also use something like canvas. If you had a heavy canvas, it would make a perfectly good bag. So that would work too. If you do decide to make a bag like this, let me know about it in the comments. Maybe tag me on Instagram. My Instagram is listed in my bio on YouTube. I'll put it in the comments section too. If you want to keep up with the projects I'm doing as I do them and not wait for the videos to come out, you can follow my Instagram. I keep that pretty updated. I even poll people sometimes on my stories to see what folks want to do for projects when I'm in an impasse. So I'm using the basting tape here to make the handle and the little tab for the zipper end. What I do is I put the basting tape down along this edge of this piece I cut out. I'm going to fold it into the middle and then stitch down on each side, and that makes a pretty solid handle. I eyeballed the folding on this one, and it turned out I didn't get it right down the middle, and that made problems for getting it to stitch up properly. So when I do this now, I always measure where the middle is and fold precisely into the middle. So that's what you should do if you're making one of these. There we go with my Stitch Master. Got it from Tandy, local Tandy store in Eugene. Shout out for you. Thanks, guys. They're great folks over there. This is like the third thing I sewed on this machine. So the other stuff were just practice pieces. So in the end, it's pretty you know, user friendly. The biggest problem I had was that I kept letting the thread get sucked out because I'm a noob with sewing machines. I'm not used to making sure I pin down that top thread before I start stitching, and the tension would pull it out. Rethread. I cut all that so you don't have to watch me rethreading the machine over and over again. But I'm pretty good at remembering to hold on to that top thread now. So I just stitched the handle. Now I'm stitching that little pull tab for the zipper in. Probably don't actually need to stitch this piece because it's so small and it gets tucked into the seam. It probably wouldn't come apart, but I was having fun starting out. So you do one of these, you can probably get away with just taping that over to the middle and then burying it in the seam like I do in a little bit. You'll be able to see. Cutting all the warts off. Okay. Now I got the zippers on, and I mentioned this in a previous project. I don't want to lose track of which side is which, so that when I put it all back together, the zipper actually lines up. So I put a little tag on there with the silver Sharpie, because of course black Sharpie wouldn't show up on the black zipper. I'm putting the tape on. Really what I should have done is just put the tape on before I pulled it apart into two pieces. Then I would be sure that I knew which side was the top. And I wanted to hide the edge. I didn't want to have a raw edge next to the zipper. So what I've done here, this leather is thin enough that I can use the basting tape to fold it over and hold it. And then when I stitch the zipper on, I'll stitch through that folded piece. It'll hold it all together. And then I only have to stitch one time. I don't have to do multiple runs. The basting tape, like contact cement, holds better when you hammer it. There's some kinds of leather this basting tape doesn't work very well on. You have to contact cement that to get it to hold down before you stitched it. And then I line it up on the top. It's easier to see what you're doing if you have the zipper lined down and then put the leather on top of it. You can see I go backward a little bit at the beginning so that I lock in those ends and I don't have to bury them or anything. And as I go, you can see I get faster. I get more comfortable with the machine. Like seriously, this is maybe the fourth seam that I stitched on the machine. Well, I guess I did 4 already in this video, so that'll be the 6th, 7th. Anyway. What I'm trying to say is, it was pretty intuitive. One of the hardest parts of the whole thing is just getting that basting tape to come off. Again, I'm going to tap it back down. It's only got to hold for a few minutes until I get the stitching done. Make sure that I get them lined up correctly. And again, put the zipper down and then put the leather on top of it to stick it. And then stitch it all the way through. Okay, I put basting tape down to hold this seam when I stitched it, but what I discovered was it was just as easy to line these up and hold them. So in the future, I didn't bother putting the basting tape down to hold this in place. There's some things I'm having to change my process because I was doing a lot of stuff hand stitching before where you really have to have it stuck in place because it takes so long to stitch through it. But with the machine, you can kind of line them up and hold them, and then as you stitch, the machine holds it together and it saves a bunch of time and materials. So see, I'm doing the other side end. I didn't bother to glue or tape it down. I'm just going to stitch it. I lined up the pieces, do a little back stitch, and then go forward, get to the middle, hold the other piece in place, get across, and there it goes. Now what I'm doing is, these are the box corners, so on the back side there's nothing that gets to go in it, so I just hold it down and box corner over. This leather was a good one to use for this project because it's pretty thin garment leather, so it's pretty compliant for this process. Some of this thicker stuff I've used doesn't really want to do the box corners as much. You got to persuade it a little bit more. And so when I do these box corners, I have to actually stop before I get to the middle so I can get that handle in, because the handle ends are buried in the seam here. See there, I tuck the handle up through the middle and get it lined up with the middle, and then just run over it, and then back to lock it in at the end. And then when I do this, this is the trickiest part here, because I have the handles inside the bag, so I have to stop when I get close, pull it into place, and then run over it. Ta-da, and there you go. Like, that is it. Honest to goodness, from a tissue box to the bag took me an hour and 20 minutes. So I didn't get a good shot of turning it right side out, but there it is. It looks very floppy here, but it does great when you've got a bunch of stuff in it, you know, your toothpaste and shampoo, etc. And it'll stand up to a lot of wear. This is really tough leather. If you couldn't tell from when I was cutting it out, it's pretty tough. So thanks for watching this video. I'm gonna have some more stuff. I actually made a rainbow of Dopp kits after this, so I'll be putting together a video of that to put up. Got some watches I'm working on, various other projects, pocket knives and things. Follow me on Instagram too. Thanks for your time. Give me a like, subscribe. Let me know what color you would use. Thanks. Bye.